Jemma Sbeg, so nice to have you here again.
I know. We were just reflecting on how it's been a big journey for both of us since I was on 2 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like so much of life has happened in that period of time, and it's exciting because you got a new book coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It will probably be out around about the time that this goes live, which would be great timing for the people who are listening or watching. It's called Person in Progress.
Mm-hmm.
It is very aligned with what you've done so well in the podcast space with the psychology of your 20s. And, you know, for the people listening who maybe likely know you, but for those who don't, you have psychology background and mental health background.
Mm-hmm.
And your podcast really touches on a lot of these experiences that are universal to people in their 20s that can feel challenging, that can feel scary and confronting, and understanding the psychology behind it, how to approach it, how to move through it.
Mm-hmm.
And the best thing about this all, your book Person in Progress, really alludes to the fact that you're navigating through that part of your life, as am I. So what has it been like to experience this meteoric rise in the popularity of your show and the recognition of your amazing work, whilst also experiencing all of those challenges alongside your viewers, listeners, and soon-to-be readers?
Big questions off the bat, Brad. How could you do it any other way? Scary. Really, really scary, because it happens so quickly. You know that quote that's like, life, it goes slow and then suddenly just happens all at once? It really has felt like that in the last 2 to 3 years. Like, I only quit my job in 2023. It's 2025 now. Like, it really hasn't been all that long. And yet in that time, my show now has, I don't even know how many downloads. We have 1.5 million subscribers on Spotify, like 1 million on Apple. And I hate looking at those numbers because it doesn't feel that way to me. It's like why podcasting is the best medium. You can kind of hide behind a microphone. Not anymore, really, but that's really why I liked it at the beginning. So many things have happened, and yet I think I just always come back to what am I doing well? What is the thing that really got me here, which is my ability to say, these are the things we're going through in our 20s. They're hard. They're difficult. These are the things we're going through as humans. Here is the research that's going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable in this experience. Here is the research that is going to allow you to say, oh, I can't get over this person and it feels like I'm addicted to them. Here's the science behind that. Like, oh, I'm really struggling with my family. I don't know how to find my calling. Here is like a psychological guidebook or a guideline to doing that. I will say I am still in my 20s. There's definitely been times when I felt like any experience I've had to document for other people. So anytime I've like had my heart broken, or anytime something good or bad has happened, you know, I have my emotional reaction, and then I think, oh, okay, I need to share what I'm finding out because other people might be going through this. And I think it's the risk that you take for making your work so authentic is you end up having to commercialize probably more of your life than you would like, but it's worth it for me in the end.
Has that come with resistance?
From my family and my friends, or from the listeners?
From you personally?
Oh, definitely. Like, I did a really vulnerable episode last year about like my mental health, and I remember like sitting there and being like, do I post this? Do I not post this? Do I do it? And then I just thought, I run a psychology podcast. If I'm not going to talk about it, who is going to talk about it? No one. Like, that's how I think.
Because I heard you speaking about this. So last year you were saying, whilst probably from an objective perspective, the most successful year of your life, but personally one of the most challenging, at least in recent times. Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
it's like, it was really, really rough. I essentially had a mental breakdown. Like, I had been pushing my mental health aside, and everything around me was like going amazing, and it looked amazing. And I have a beautiful, beautiful partner. I was making money, like how amazing, like for the first time, like this really amazing money. And I was like, wow, like I can buy whatever, like not whatever I want, but like I can like shout my family, and like I have access to things that I didn't previously have. And my career was doing really well. And then suddenly it was like something just snapped. And I, in hindsight, had seen it developing over time. Like, there were things where I was pushing myself to avoid thinking about it. I was like, yep, I can commit to that thing. I can travel to that place. I can do a million things a week, so I don't have to think about the fact that I'm really not coping with whatever it is and whatever was bothering me. And then it kind of just all came to this like fizzling point where I was just like, one day, I was just sitting at the dinner table and was just like, oh, I'm just really unhappy. Like, I'm so unhappy. And it was just like a big, like, it almost felt like suddenly like a bucket of snow was just like dumped over my body. And I was just like, I like took this deep breath and I was just like, oh my God. And then I just like started crying, and I didn't stop crying for like 3 weeks, and I couldn't do anything. And it was just, my mum came in and like to look after me, and like Tom had to take time off work because I was just like paralyzed by all these like such dark thoughts and all this stress and like turmoil that I had been neglecting because I wanted to give the impression that like it was all going well.
It's such an interesting point you make, because I've heard a lot of people speak about this in early success, especially not just early success in your field, but early success in the scheme of your life.
Mm-hmm.
When it starts to happen and maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome creeps in, I'll ask you about that in a moment because I don't want to assume for you. And you start to see how good it is and you like the direction it's headed in. Sometimes there's this anxiety or fear that if I don't capitalize on the opportunity right now and max myself out, it's going to run dry and I will have wished I'd taken those opportunities. Does that resonate?
Oh my gosh, yes. And you know what? You actually said something to me maybe like 6 months ago where you were like, oh, you know, the balance. And I don't know if you remember saying this to me, but you were like balancing ambition and appreciation. Do you remember
speaking about it a moment ago?
No way.
Yeah.
I remember you saying that. You messaged me that and I was like, whoa. It's like, that is exactly what it is. This tension between, I need to feel grateful for what I have, and it's okay to just like slow down and appreciate the moment that I'm in. And also, well, if I don't work harder and harder and harder, how am I going to prove to people that I deserve this? How am I going to prove it to myself? And at the end of the day, I really had to sit down and just be like, would you be making this if no one was paying attention? And if the answer is no, I wouldn't be making this if no one was paying attention, then you probably shouldn't be doing it, because all you're doing it for is external validation. But if you would continue making your podcast, if you would continue writing, if you continue making art, pursuing your writing, whatever it is that interests you, even if you didn't have an audience and you just loved it for the sake of it, like that's the thing you're meant to be doing. And so I ended up like cutting out a bunch of responsibilities and things that I put on my plate where I was like, I just actually don't want to do this. Big one was TikTok. I was like, I don't want to do TikTok. I was like, I didn't, you know, set out to be making content. I set out to like short form content. Like I set out to make long form content and to really dive in and give people information. And it was just like stressing me out too much. So you choose your battles.
Fuck, one of the things I love about you and your story is I have so much respect for the way that you've actually, and I say this in a sense that obviously you've had great success on social off the back of your pod, but you've kind of created your success in this way that isn't exactly linear to the modern day podcast story. Hear me out. You didn't do video for a long time. It was audio.
Don't.
I thought you've started doing video.
Everyone thinks I have because I batch record clips, but if I did a full episode on video, we've tried. I'm so awkward that we've tried like three or four times.
See, I love this because you've so authentically carved your own path to fit who you want to be and who you are. And the fact that it's still audio, the fact that like TikTok is kind of a thing that everyone says you have to do. I've felt exactly what you're saying lately, where I'm like, I don't enjoy the platform.
No.
I actually find that success on TikTok, whilst it can somewhat relate, there's videos where I've been a guest on podcasts and they've had 25 million views on TikTok. The carryover isn't really that special.
Yeah.
It's a platform that feels very transitory and ephemeral. Like it's kind of there for a moment and then it's gone in the wind.
Yeah. Can you, like, I asked someone the other day, I was like, what was trending 3 months ago? Could you tell me?
No.
Yeah. And at one time I asked someone, I was like, could you tell me the last 5 videos? Could you just tell me 5 videos, any videos that you have watched on TikTok in the last day?
There's a lack of presence on the app, for sure.
No one could tell me.
So tell me, everything you're saying right now around this particularly prickly, tough period of the last couple of years, did you feel a sense of imposter syndrome?
So definitely at the beginning, most certainly. And I remember like crying about it and being like, I just want people to stop listening because then I can just get back to being normal. Like I don't want to be someone who people know. I think I was scared of being criticized. I had no intention of having an online presence the way I do now. And even then it's still minimal. But I definitely was like, I cannot get too used to this, because eventually people are going to realize I'm a fraud and they're going to cast me out. So I have to be comfortable with the idea of this not lasting. It was this weird anxiety of like, you know, don't appreciate your success. Like, not so much don't appreciate it, but you should not take it for granted, to the point where I was almost like, just get it away from me. Like, I can't have this rise, because it was so stressful. Because I was working like as a consultant, like at a mid-tier firm, doing like work for the government on health projects. Like, it just happened so quickly. Definitely a lot of imposter syndrome. Nowadays, not so much. And it's deliberate. I've really been trying to force myself to just say, you'll figure it out. Everything could go away tomorrow and you'd still be okay, because you have love and you have family and you have friends and you care about things and you're creative, and all of that is what's led you to be where you are now. And even if, you know, the success was taken away, you could rebuild something better. You could do something else. I think it's something if I was talking to like a young content creator or a young podcaster or something like that, I'd say, don't give your 100% to this. Make sure you remember who you are outside of numbers online, outside of making content, outside of being a podcaster. And like the points where I felt the worst and had the most imposter syndrome was when I was like, I have no hobbies outside of my job being podcasting, because I obviously, like, my podcast was my hobby, and then suddenly it was how I made money, and it became very, very serious, and nothing filled the space that it had previously occupied. And I remember someone being like, oh, so what do you do for fun? And I was like, work. Like, work. And it's been a real big thing of being like, rebuilding hobbies, rebuilding connection, making sure I'm still have goals that aren't related to professional success.
It's interesting what you mentioned there, because I think that a challenging lesson for anyone in life is when you look to something that you want in the future and you work towards it, and then you achieve it and it's actualized and you're there experiencing it, you can really cling to the identity that you hold in that.
Yeah.
And I think it was James Clear, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure it was him who said the tighter you cling to your identity, the harder it is to grow beyond it. And I feel like kind of when you get somewhere in life after you've worked so hard for it, you probably don't appreciate the set of skills that's required to manage that. You know, and I think when you're clinging to the identity of it, you kind of almost need to grow beyond it to handle it and feel comfortable in it.
I just don't think anyone is meant to be one word or one dimensional. You are not meant to be parent. You are not meant to be husband. You are not meant to be podcaster. You're not meant to be lawyer. Like, you are meant to be multi-hyphenate, and you're meant to be doing many, many things, and your identity as an individual is meant to shift and evolve. Like, of course, some things, you know, once you're a dad, once you're a mum, you're always going to be that. Once you're a wife or a husband or a partner, hopefully you're always going to be that as well. But, yes, you know, it cannot be everything. And I feel like at every single different stage in people's lives, they lose themselves because they tie themselves too much into what they are at that point. And for me, I was like, okay, so I'm podcaster, and I have to be serious about this, and I have to care as deeply as I can, and I have to be putting everything, because otherwise, like, I have to prove myself. And then really I started to diversify and be like, oh, I also like to do ceramics, and I also like, I'm training for a half marathon right now. It's not going.
I've seen that.
We're trying for it. I'm like halfway through.
In saying that though, you're halfway through, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but last weekend you cracked the 10K.
Yeah. How did you know that?
I was watching.
Oh my God.
Like, oh, I seen you in Senny P.
I was
hitting laps, and I'm like, I respect it.
Oh my God. Do you follow me on Strava?
I don't. In fact, I've actually taken a seasonal break from Strava.
Really?
Because I can, at times in my life, I've probably been a little bit obsessed with it.
It's obsessive. And so I'm going to say this. I had never run before, and I got into it in like November last year.
Yep.
Like, I would run like at the gym because I had to, you know, like I do like 3-4Ks, and I'd be like, this sucks. And I would do it like once a month, but I'd never like committed to like a running goal. And Strava, oh my God, half of the reason why I think I'm I go on it and I just look at my stats.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, yeah. I like look at my stats constantly.
I feel like you'd be that kind of person where you'd like a good stat too.
Oh, you know I like a good stat.
Yeah.
I'm obsessive about it. I'm like, that's my pace. Okay, so if I do 1 second faster per lap, that means I'll like, it's not good. I look at all the data constantly and like, so where was I on the it's
having a beautiful minds moment with Strava printouts on the wall at home.
Tom was literally like, can you not like, well, the other night I was like, and then this was my run on the weekend, but look at my splits right here. Yeah. See how it has a negative. And like, he's like, I don't care. He does. But he was like, but yeah, I cracked my 10K.
Let me ask you, how much has running done for you mentally? Because I think what you're alluding to here is the importance of having things in your life that aren't necessarily high stakes.
100%. Like, how did you just summarize that?
Well, because I have a deep sense of feeling for this myself, where I literally said to a mate of mine last week, he's a professional athlete, and so much of his life is training and is his sport. And I said, he's particularly taken it to the next level this year. He was at the highest level, but just their commitment of training this year is a lot higher. I'm like, man, I haven't seen you play golf or box for the last couple months. And he's like, yeah, I kind of haven't had the time for it. And reflecting myself, I'm like, I actually don't have any hobbies.
A lot of people realize that. Yeah. My sister's also an athlete and she has the same thing. When people with that mindset, like the mindset that you have and your friend and like people like my sister, and for me for a while was just like, it's just all or nothing. It's just, I'm hungry for it. Everything has to go into this. And we move that to different areas of our life. Yeah. Like I remember when I was looking for love, it was like I would meet someone, I'd be like, okay, that's my person and you're everything and I need to put everything into this relationship. Or like a new friend or like a new project. It's just like obsessive. And I like running because I'm just like, I don't care. Like I've set this goal, I'll get there. It's these slow increments. Obviously I'm a little bit obsessive about it, but no one's going to know if I run the 21K or not. Like, yes, I just go out for the run by myself. It's such a beautiful part of my routine. I actually really enjoy it. And I think it's the first time I really enjoyed like a kind of routine exercise. You know what I mean? Like I used to, like I've always like exercised and loved working out, but it was this thing of like, oh, this is enjoyable when I take the pressure off. And this is enjoyable when no one's watching me. And when I don't have to do it for, like, I haven't shared any of my running journey on like social media yet because I'm like, I don't want this to become another thing that...
I think I've seen it just on your close friends.
Oh, my close friends. I was going to say, only the close friends know what's going on. You also probably know about all my brain stuff going on as well, which has been another unique thing.
Your what, sorry?
Oh, I haven't told you this.
No. Talk to me about this.
Okay, we're going to get... I haven't talked about this. So first for this podcast, I had like a crazy health scare like 2 months ago where I went to the doctor and went to the optometrist to get my new glasses, and they did a retinal scan and were like, something is wrong. And like one of your optic nerves is really inflamed and you need to go and see an ophthalmologist like immediately. And I left and I was like, oh, what's that all about? Don't really mind. And then I got like 4 missed calls from the optometrist and she was like, hey, don't want to alarm you, but please, like, could you call me back, please? You need to make sure you're not having a stroke because this is early sign of a stroke. And I was like, what's just happened? So I go to my doctor, I get into an emergency appointment with the ophthalmologist and she's like, all right, so we need to rule out that you don't have a brain lesion and that you don't have a tumor. And we have to rule out that you don't have MS. And it's probably this thing where there's too much fluid in your brain and here are your options. And I'm still like waiting for answers at this point. I got my MRI like a week ago. I was going to say, I was like, I never know how much I've shared with people, but I feel like I'm coping with that because it's not a public thing. I guess I've shared it, but I don't feel bad. Like we're friends catching up. And it's also just, I've allowed myself to just have different, like, if I was in the mindset I was last year, I would have just been like, oh my God, this is such a distraction from like working. Or it would have been like, oh, this is the end of the world. I'm going to die. And like, that's the worst thing that happened. And all these things that I wanted to do, I couldn't do. And I think it's just so much that has happened in the last year has just allowed me to be stoic and be like, okay, I'm going to just appreciate what I have right now. I have the body I have right now. I'm young. I can I'm going to start running. Who cares? Like, I have time that I don't need to put into work. I'm going to go do a ceramics course. I'm going to go camping with my loved ones. And I feel like all that happened so that when this health stuff happened, and it's been very scary and overwhelming, I just feel a lot of peace about it. And you wouldn't, I don't know, if you have any advice on how to deal with like, those kind of diagnoses, like it's stressful.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Because I think that, you know, the health is kind of the top order of priority in which, you know, you can get a little bit complacent with your health. When it's going well, as I say, a healthy person wants many things, a sick person wants just one. You have to then become very focused on getting that right. It is the foundation of which we get to enjoy everything in life. Like, you take your health away, you don't get to enjoy your partner, you don't get to enjoy your work. Yeah. You don't get to enjoy any experience. And so has it made you approach anything differently?
I just feel like I'm going into the busiest period of my life ever. And it's so funny how we were talking about how people probably can see that as well and be like, okay, my book's about to be released. Let me actually give you the series of events that has happened.
Yeah, play it out for me.
I really haven't spoken to many people about this. I've been trying to keep it under wraps, but why not? I signed the documents for my house the next day. So I bought a house. Been working on from that since I was 16. I bought the house. Then I went to the doctor and had that crazy appointment where they were like, you basically, firstly, you're going somewhat blind in one of your eyes as well, which was a huge thing and was super stressful. Then I basically was like, we need to rule out these really scary things. It's one of these 3 things, none of which are that great, but we'll get through it. And then, like, my book's being released in the next month. And we got a dog. Yeah. And we got a dog. Yeah. We got a dog like 2 days before we signed for the house as well. I signed for the house. And then I'm doing like this book tour that's hopefully whatever happens. And it's been this weird thing where I was coming into it and I was like, I'm so stressed. Like, I'm so stressed about, are we going to sell enough books? Like, am I going to sell enough books for people to think I'm worthwhile? And like, how am I going to do the show while this is happening? And my other show, Mantra, and this and this and this. And I don't know, but the like health stuff has just made me so calm, because I'm just like, whatever happens, as long as this is fine, and hopefully it is, who cares? Things go wrong all the time. Things don't work out the way you want them to. Like, and I think that was the case where I always think of the quote of like, tell God your plans. Like, that's what's the quote? It's like, the funniest joke to God is to hear your plans, or something like that. Like, if you tell their plan, they're just going to laugh and be like, no, you don't know what's coming. You just have to loosen up a little bit sometimes.
You have to surrender to life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned before, like, in acknowledging how much is happening in your life, you've had to strip a bunch of things that were unnecessary away. I want to share a story with you. I'm not sure if you've ever heard this story, but it resonated so highly with me. So have you ever heard of the story of the statue of David? I'm sure you know the statue of David. I'm not sure if you've seen it in real time. I have it tattooed on my arm. It's a significant statue. It represents strength in facing big adversity, and that's why I love it. But about a year ago, it was actually a sales trainer who had come into my work office, and he was talking about the story behind how it was made. And I didn't know this, so it was a complete shock, and it really resonated with me, so I'll share it with you. He was saying that when Michelangelo was given the task of crafting David, sculpting David, I should say, he was given this large piece of stone that was meant to be used to create an ornament to hang from the ceiling of this palazzo. And, you know, given the stone, he looked at it, he spent time considering how we would bring it to life, and he went away, and after a certain amount of time, he come back and presented David. Now, David was so big and magnificent that they actually couldn't hang it from the ceiling of this palazzo because it was too heavy. So rather, they put it at the front door of this state building. And when they unveiled the statue of David, this lady walking past, who recognized what was formerly this piece of stone that Michelangelo had been instructed to sculpt, she just thought it was so beautiful, she broke down into tears. And she said to Michelangelo, she said, "How have you created something so beautiful from that big piece of stone?" His response, I think, is beautiful. He said, I always saw David in the stone. I just had to remove everything that wasn't him.
Oh my God.
And it made me think that so often in life we have problems and we think that adding solutions will help the situation. It made me think about how often do we just need to remove things from our life instead of adding things? It's kind of contrary to the popular belief of how you solve a problem, is by adding solutions as opposed to removing situations and problems and things that don't actually aid your life. So I love that you've identified that, because I think it's an important note for everyone.
It's honestly, and it's with everything, right? Your mental health isn't doing well. It's like, let's add medication, which is obviously useful. And like, let's add all these things and let's get all these interventions in. It's like, okay, but no one's looking at your life and saying, well, that relationship or that habit or that workplace, if you remove that, maybe a lot of these other things would be better. Or if we removed a substance abuse issue, like sometimes things do need to be extracted, like you said, for it to really shine. And honestly, that's what's happened in like the last, I would say 6 months, definitely more so in the last like 2 months, of just being like, so much is just not important anymore. Not important. Like a huge part of, you know, there's even some friendships where I'm like, this just isn't important. Like I know I'm about to go through a really stressful period, whatever happens. I just don't have energy. I just can't have you in my life. And that's unfortunate. But it was like all these choices I really had to make for a while. I wasn't prepared to make. I just was like, it was so easy when I was faced with, you know, this crazy thing that could happen. And like I said, I'm still waiting for like answers, but it's been stressful. And then other commitments where I'm just like, okay, no, I can't do that. I used to say yes to everything. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. And I'm sorry to disappoint you. I can't do this. I can't do that. And it's just been amazing seeing how people are so supportive of that. The people who really know what's going on. Like no one's pushed back. No one said like, well, you know, this is a big opportunity. Like this is really important. Yeah. You should really do that. It's like, I don't know. I'm just like, this is both like the best moment of my life right now and also the most stressful so far, where I'm just like battling these two things of like the good and the bad that comes with being alive. You have these peaks and these troughs, and sometimes they happen at the same time, and one day you're like at the top of the roller coaster and the next day you're at the bottom. Like 2 days ago I had to go in and have an MRI and I just spent the whole day like crying, and then I got my scans back and I was just looking at them like, I don't know what's happening. Like I can't read an MRI. I used to look at them like when I was doing like my psychology degree, but I can't read an MRI. Yeah. But I was like sitting in bed being like, looking through every single scan. There's like hundreds and hundreds of pictures, and Tom had to be like, I'm just going to take that away. Like, you can't look at that right now. Like, that's not helpful.
But, you know, I think it's so important that like everything you're touching on here, yes, there are experiences, not so much the health stuff, but all of these challenges and experiences we have in life. You know, your podcast being the banner of the psychology of your 20s. I know that you've spoken so openly and on so many occasions about how so many of the listeners are just not people in their 20s, but people from their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and onwards who are experiencing all of these things time and time again. And it kind of, I guess, as you grow up, and I'm on the cusp of ending my 20s. I'll be 29 this month. I'm very excited because I feel that the narrative in which I used to believe, which was like, oh, time's getting away from me, I'm now recognizing all the strengths that come with the lessons and the age, and hopefully more wisdom, a few extra greys, all those things are part and parcel.
And like a huge, like so much coming up for you guys as well.
For sure. And I guess you start to feel a sense of peace in the acceptance that I don't know that we ever solve any of these problems, but they reoccur and we just get better at dealing with them.
Yeah. It's like what people say about grief, actually, about how grief never gets smaller, your world just gets bigger. And I think that's the case with these problems. It's like, you know, the first time you encounter a really difficult math problem, it's going to be really, really hard. And you're going to probably cry. You know, your dad might yell at you and be like, why aren't you doing your math homework? And, you know, you're going to think, I can't do this. And then you do it. And then the next time it gets a bit easier and it gets a bit easier, you're still solving the problem. So you still have to solve it. It's just that you get the tools and the habits and the tricks to do it. But you're right. I have people reach out to me who are in their 60s, who are in their 50s, who are in their 70s, some of them who listen to it with their children, who want to understand their children, others who are like, you know, I had this message from this woman once and it's always stuck with me. She was like, I'm 65 and I just went through my first situationship. She was like, I was married. I think I need to remember. She was like, I was married for 35 years and then he passed away. And then I got back on the horse. I got back to dating. She was like, you know, I might have another 30 years here. Like by the, you know, she was, I think 60 when he passed away. And she was like, I might have another 30 years. Do I want to do them alone? Maybe not. And she was like, yeah, I was in my first ever situationship, and your podcast about dealing with situationships in your 20s like really helped me realize that this man was just stringing me along. And I was like, that's like, wow. I was like, you know, people always do say to me like, why'd you call it the psychology of your 20s? It's so limiting and it doesn't include me. And I was like, you know, because at the time I thought that my 20s were everything. And I thought obviously the 20s is when you experience a lot of these things for the first time. So you think that it's, you know, you think that it's contained in this decade. And then you realize like, no, it's actually a lifetime thing. It's a lifetime thing to try and find your calling. It's a lifetime thing to have complicated family dynamics. It's a lifetime thing to overthink, to compare, to do all these like things that we as humans are psychologically drawn into doing, if you know what I mean. I
know exactly what you mean. And it's just interesting, even just hearing you say that out loud, that your 20s is likely the first time you experience many of these things. I think it's such a nice reminder that, you know, hopefully things like heartbreak, I hope I never have to experience again. I'm sure, you know, I'm very confident in that fact, but I'm sure you'll experience heartbreak in other areas through like
other
grief
forms,
and, you know, other forms.
Friendship breakups.
Yeah, but you learn the lessons, hopefully, that you experience through this decade that inform the years to come. And I guess the book, being titled Person in Progress, is so much about this. So talk to me about the concept of how you've written it, the lessons and the insights that are attached to it, because to me, this book's a bit of a mystery. It's not out yet. I don't have my hands on a copy, so...
I don't even have my hands on a copy.
So I'm excited to hear about it.
But not a hard copy, you know what I mean? Imagine me saying that. Yeah, the ghostwriter's not done with it yet. I wrote every word. So basically, it's Person in Progress, a roadmap to the psychology of your 20s. But really, it's about person in progress. And it's this idea that we are constantly obsessed with finish lines and goalposts and getting to a certain stage, not appreciating that when you get there, the goalposts just shift. At no point are you going to be perfectly evolved. And actually, it's the evolution of who you are through your 20s and beyond that is the whole point of life, not getting to some particular point where you think your life is perfect. That's never going to last for very long. Every single one of us in some area is in a state of progress. You know, I've never met someone who 100% of their life is down pat, solid, everything is accomplished. Never. I literally cannot name one single person who would not say, oh, I have something else I want to improve. So I think that that's really the theme of the book is we're all progressing to something. And we talk about it in 4 different ways. We talk about the quarter life crisis and how it's actually an opportunity. That's the first section. And we talk about in that section why it's important to take risks, how to acknowledge and categorize the kind of mistakes you'll make during this decade, how to battle for authenticity, how to not compare, how to overcome overthinking. We talk about very, you know, cerebral, very, I think, vulnerable things in terms of our self-concept. Then we talk about love on the brain, and not just romantic love, but friendship breakups, you know, repeating history in relationships, the stigma of being single in your 20s, which I'm sure so many people deal with, and the battle between settling and staying single for a little bit longer when it doesn't feel socially acceptable, which is a total myth. And we talk about work. So how psychology influences your finances, imposter syndrome, burnout, the myth of the dream job. And then we end on like a really vulnerable section, which is everyone is healing from something. So we talk about family trauma, and we talk about healing your inner child. We talk about mental health. We talk about loneliness. We talk about grief. And it's kind of basically like you could read the whole thing front to back. I would invite you to do so, but you don't have to. You can also select the section that most appeals to you for what you are progressing towards.
I like that.
Yeah, which I think, you know, I was making a book for people primarily in their 20s, but really I was doing the audiobook recently and I was like, wow, this is really for anyone of all ages. Like, I'm sure some of these themes are universal, but basically we were like, being in progress is everyone's progressing in different ways. I can't just write a book that's like going to fit everyone's timeline and where they feel like they've achieved things and where they haven't. So this is a way to be able to choose and get the resources you need. And the like there is so many psychology studies in this book.
I love that.
Doing the sources list it took me 4 days. And I just sat there being like, where is this article? Like finding the APA, like the sources list is in itself insane.
That's great. Can we pull on a thread of a few of those topics?
Yeah, I know. I just gave you so much information.
No, I really want to dive into a few of those, and I'm glad you laid it out. And hopefully the audience is happy with my selection of the chapters and pieces we're going to pull on.
I can't believe we didn't send you a copy yet. Like a PDF.
I'm coming to the book launch.
Oh, yeah, I was.
You know, we'll grab one.
You are coming to the book
launch. I'll buy a copy of the book launch to support.
I think you're going to get a free one before then. I think you're on the PR list.
We'll see. Maybe I'll buy one and you can sign it for me, so I'll put it on the shelf at home. I want to ask, the topic that probably resonates off the bat with me is, you spoke about quarter life crisis, I should say. For me personally, I guess if I look back and identify the time in my life in which that probably makes sense, sort of 24, which if it stacks up, pretty good innings for me. That's 24 is the quarter life. You talk about dream job. At 24, I had such a fixation on what my dream job and career looked like. And I'm playing out a lot of that here, but it's found new meaning for me. It's found new meaning in the sense that I think when maybe this is a convenient belief, but because it hasn't worked out so quickly, or because it hasn't played out financially the way I've seen it playing out, it's really confirmed to me that in all the failures and challenges, I really love what I'm doing. And I think that's a beautiful but also convenient belief. But I want to ask you about the topic of dream jobs, because I know a lot of people have a, low level of satisfaction in the job that they work. They find it hard, but they feel it's necessary and a means to an end. So talk to me about that topic and what seems to be resonating with people at this period of their life.
My big belief when it comes to the dream job is that there is not one. There is not a dream job. And some people hear me say that and they're like, no way. But there are so many things that you could be doing with the specific goals and skills that you have. And so sometimes I think that society's fixation on you should have a dream job in mind that you are constantly working towards leaves a lot of people thinking, well, I don't have one of those. Like, I don't have something that I would really, really love to be doing above all else. Does that mean that I don't have a purpose in life? I don't have a calling? And what I say to those people is, no, because what you do for work is not the only thing that is going to define you. You can find meaning and purpose in so many other ways that you don't need to be paid for. I think about one of my best friends, Erin, and she was working this job for a while where she just used to say to me, I really don't like my job, but you know what? My job pays for me to have a life. My job pays it so that on the weekends I can do the things that I actually really want to do. And I said, well, wouldn't you want to do a job she does so much stuff. I was like, wouldn't you want to do a job that does conservation? Like she's incredible. She's always out in nature. She's always doing bush regenerative work and cleanups, and she's always out taking photos of birds. And she's actually like one of the coolest people. She's like got this fiery red hair, and she like has the most unique style of anyone I've ever seen. And her partner like used to be like a ranger and a tour guide. Like they're just really cool people. And she's like, no, because if I was doing this for my job, I would absolutely hate it. Because once you put money into something, and you have, like I always say to people, you have to love something 200% before you make it into your career, because making something your job is immediately going to take away a lot of the love. So you have to really, really love what you're doing. And she was like, I just don't see why making money from this would make me happy when I can work this job and it pays more than I would ever make doing my hobby for a living. And I get to still have space and time to do this and to pay for my life. So I want people to remember, if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, the dream job is an idea that really only came about in the last 100, 200 years. And it came about specifically around like after World War II, when people started having more options in terms of what career they wanted to go into, and when work became a bigger part of our identity. Work used to not be as big of a part of our identity as it is now. As in, there were fewer jobs, and yes, jobs had status attached to them, but they weren't these like all complete ideas of who we were, and we were nothing else. And now I think this trouble is, because we are working more, we're working longer hours, like as a society, statistically, the hours we spend at work are going up and up and up. We do love this idea of the thing I spend most of my hours doing is the thing I have to love the most. But it doesn't have to be the thing that you always constantly want to be doing. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I know. I feel like I'm trying to articulate it, and obviously I say it so well in the book, but I just say find your purpose or your mission that can translate into multiple different opportunities. A dream job for you probably doesn't exist, and even if it exists right now, you'll be in that job, and in 5 years' time you'll realize it's no longer the dream job, because again, you're a person in progress, you're evolving, you will shift and change. So I also worry for people who are like, they're 22 and they're like, well, this is my dream job. At 29, they're like, well, this is my dream job, and like, I don't want to leave because this is what I've always dreamed of. No, you have to be open to evolving alongside your mission and your purpose.
Well, you're right. The circumstances of your life change.
And
I've heard parents who talk about having loved their jobs until they brought kids into the world. And then they're like, the idea of travel, I hate it. I just want to be with the kids.
Yeah. My dad was one of those people.
Yeah, right. And it's super interesting that one of the things that I think is such a great lesson of growing up and getting older and experiencing life, in everything that you were so certain of 5 years ago can make a fool out of you today. You know?
Oh, Lord,
we're so set in the beliefs that we have. I remember at 20 thinking that I knew everything about how the rest of my life would play out, to the fact that it's actually laughable today. I think about me personally. I left my career in real estate at 24, which I'd worked so hard to cultivate and to grow, at a point at which it was starting to come to fruition with some success and consistency. And I left it for the dream job. And it's given me so many beautiful life experiences. But I found myself now back in real estate. Like, I operate full-time selling houses.
Which is crazy.
And doing this and doing a bunch of things. But I found a way to make it work. And my perspective of it has changed. Because I think that I don't actually put too many of my eggs ever in the basket of the dream situation. Because life is always evolving. Life is always changing. I used to potentially reject money, and we'll talk about finances because it's a big stress for a lot of people in their 20s and even their 30s in the modern world that we live in. Oh my God,
every day. Like,
it's crazy,
so
right?
stressful.
You know, the cost of living is higher than it's ever been, especially, you know, we're sitting here in the city of Sydney, which is one of the most expensive places in the world to live. Makes you shiver. It's crazy. And, you know, with that comes money stress. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever listened to Naval Ravikant. I was listening to him early this morning, and he was saying money solves money problems, right? You know, you kind of need it to live. We definitely need it to live. And so, you know, at some point you have to find a means to paying your bills and having a level of security. Let me ask you this. I'm sure you've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Of course.
You know, financial security sits below self-actualization.
It does.
Do you think that we can actually experience self-actualization before we've secured our bread and butter and have a sense of food and shelter and enough abundance for our family?
See, I think you can. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'll do a quick explanation.
Yeah, go.
It's a little triangle like this. At the very top is self-actualization, and then working down is the things you need to achieve before you can achieve self-actualization. So at the bottom is very basic things. You need food, you need shelter, you need water, you need oxygen. Then there's other things like you could have all those things and you'd be alive. But then you need social connection. Then you need financial, you need some kind of financial concreteness, financial well-being. You need money. And then you need opportunity, and you need other things. And so I do think that it is possible. I just think it's so difficult. And I think that self-actualization requires you to actually have worked through problems and troubles. Sometimes those are financial troubles. It's required you probably to have to work shitty jobs when you didn't want to work them. Like I worked some crap jobs, and I wouldn't even say I'm self-actualized at all, but I do sometimes think that like in pursuit of your dream, it's okay to take detours where you're doing things you didn't expect you were going to do.
Yeah, life is not linear.
No, life is not linear. Like, and it's okay to just work a job for the money. Don't think that you fail because you're doing that, or that you're any less self-actualized. I think that it's the pursuit of all those things below self-actualization that get you to self-actualization. It's understanding how to connect with people and securing social connection. It's understanding, okay, what is my basic security needs? What do I need to feel safe? That helps me realize who I am more and self-actualize. What does it mean to have family? What does that look like for me now? Is it really the family I've been given, or is it the one that I'm making? What role does money play in my life? How much do I need? How much do I want to give away? Like the thing, that's what gets you to a self-actualized point.
It's a great point you make. I love the way you played that out. So it's actually what's the word you used? Pursuing.
Yeah,
there was a million P words.
There's so many P words happening in this episode.
A lot of P words. Pursuing each of those tiers below self-actualization is actually what allows you to get there, or to get as close to there as possible at any given time in your life. Because the interesting point is, and I was thinking about this on the way up, if you actually think too strictly about each of those tiers being a destination, well then, if you exist in a changing financial landscape and the cost of living crisis that we do right now, financial security is a moving metric.
Oh, hell yeah.
The dream job that allowed you to do that and feel self-actualized 6 months ago may not be the same in 6 months' time in order to keep living by the means that you are. So I love how you've identified not feeling as though they're concrete places, but rather the pursuit of each of those.
Can I give you another example of this? I saw this girl on TikTok the other day. Actually, not on TikTok, on Instagram. I always just say TikTok because it's like the easiest one to think of. But I saw this girl on Instagram who is quite TikTok famous, and she's incredibly wealthy. Her family is this incredibly wealthy Singaporean family. She has never had to struggle for any of the things below self-actualization. So according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, she should be well on her way. And I was watching her content, and I was like, gosh, like you are so, and I'm not a big judger, but I was like, you are so vapid. Like you are showing off all this wealth and money. And I'm like, and what do you do all day? You have all this money and you don't even think about giving it back. And here you are buying Van Cleef and whatever luxury bags. And I was like, so according to this hierarchy of needs, you should be self-actualized right now because you have everything that you needed to get there, and you're not. And I think that really proves my point of it's the progress through those. And it doesn't mean that if you've had money for your, you've been comfortable, that you can't be self-actualized, but it's the balancing act of having to shift on those and knowing that it's not just having, like, there is still work involved in self-actualizing, and there are challenges and there are struggles, and like you can be handed everything and not self-actualize. So working for things a little bit harder, I think, actually gets you closer to the point than this girl I saw who, I was like, you have everything, and yet your life seems so empty.
It's such a great point. You said working for it. And I think that, like, to really earn anything and feel as though you have an understanding and the ability to manage any of these things in life, you have to have earned your own respect in the way that you've worked for it. And I think that's such a great point that a lot of people in their 20s and early phase of life forget about, is this. There's so much to respect about your effort in going after the things that are important. Doesn't always, sometimes it's easy to go, I'll come up short, or I'm struggling on the bills. But if you're putting in work, you're working hard, and you're trying to make life happen, there's so much about that you should respect.
And you get such great stories. Like, you get amazing stories, and you have no idea that the struggles or the things you're going through now, the hard moments, the foundation that is laying for a really amazing, authentic life. And I think about it like all the time, all these shitty experiences I went through in my early 20s, in my late teens, and I moved out of home quite early, and I was like supporting myself, and I was in these terrible workplaces, and I had these terrible relationships, and it was really awful. But I was like, now I look back at that and I'm like, that's the foundation for an authentic life. And I wouldn't trade that struggle, as minor as it probably is compared to others, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's really important to actually have had a journey rather than just a destination.
I love that. I want to talk about comparison. I know we've spoken about comparison before, but it's something that a lot of people seem to be struggling with. You just shared a great example, and this is why it's a perfect segue that, we have so much access to these people online who are living what we seem to deem as like glorious lives from the outside looking in, and objectively they have things that are hard to get, and so we believe that they've earned them, but it's not always the case. So, you know, for someone who's struggling with comparison, you said you talk about this in the book, how do we go about dealing with and stopping ourselves from drawing comparisons with people who are living different experiences to us?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I don't think anyone listening to this can say, oh, I never compare. And I have never compared. I don't think the comparison is the problem. It is very hard to stop the comparison. Just the act of looking at someone else and looking at your own life and making a judgment. The judgment part is what we do need to change, because it's very easy to go, oh, wow, me and Kendall Jenner are not the same person. But me and Kendall Jenner not being the same person, am I going to let that hurt my feelings? No. So the exercise I always tell people to do is to say, when you are finding yourself in that point where you're just like, oh, I don't have anything, look at their life, they're so perfect, they're so amazing, I want that, how come I don't have that, I deserve that, is to say, okay, this person has an amazing career, and one day I will too. Or this person looks so amazing, and I don't know the full story behind that. I want that person's life. They have it so much better than me. And what does that say about my life? Like, why does that make my life any worse? So it's not allowing your comparison to be a complete statement. Like, they're so much better than me, full stop. That's not up. They're so much better than me. And how amazing. I can be inspired by them then. Like, you cannot allow comparison to be that one statement, that snap judgment to be the end of your thought process around that. You are always going to compare. Even the most confident people on this planet still compare. It's about shifting the judgment so it helps you rather than harms you. I think that's the important part.
I love that. It's interesting, right? I was just thinking, have you ever heard of the gorilla test?
No, what is this? You have so many little nuggets of knowledge. I love it.
This is fun. So I heard about this for the first time maybe a month or two ago. So I'm sure you've heard of inattentional blindness, right? So there's, I guess, a test that they've used to show this. So the idea is someone puts this in front of you without having explained the background. And it's a video of a bunch of people in white or grey hoodies passing around a basketball and moving in a weird movement pattern around each other in sort of circles. And you're supposed to count how many times the people in the grey hoodies have passed the basketball. And as you spend so much of your time paying attention to these people and the way that they move the ball and move around and what colour jumper they're wearing, a lot of people fail to recognise that someone in a gorilla suit walks through the middle of the video and dances in front of the camera. And it's this inattentional blindness that you're paying such attention to the thing that you've focused on that you fail to recognise something clearly obvious in front of you. And I think that when we fall into comparison and judgment, sometimes we fail to recognise how good the things in our life actually are. Yeah. And we're all guilty of this, right? Like I just the other week, you know, I'm as guilty of anyone as comparing myself and, you know, the podcast, because a lot of it is rooted by and backed by stats. It's easy to compare. You watch people move up the charts, you see people's numbers, you see the clips online, and you start to question why maybe you're not experiencing some more of that success yourself. And, you know, just someone who I admire closely who's having these big life wins, and I'm like, oh, it's so amazing. So happy for them. There was no animosity. There was no animosity in it.
It's about you, right?
Right? Yeah, but I was like, God, I can't wait till I get to experience that.
Yeah.
And I sort of stopped myself and thought, you know what? Like, there's so many great pieces of my life. Like, the most important part of my life, which is my people, and I'm flying. I'm on top of the world. So I think it's such a great piece of advice and wisdom you give to change the judgment, because I sometimes get shitty at myself. Why do I compare? But I think you're always going to do that. You're human. I think we forget that.
You are human. And I think the other thing is, oh my God, I was completely lost what I was going to say. You know when that happens?
Yeah,
when you're just
all
like,
the time.
No, oh my God, I had such a great point to make off that point.
Well, we'll come back to it if you think of it.
Yeah, wait. Oh my God. Oh yes, here it is.
Here it is.
Here it is. No, but I really, really understand that. And I also think what I always say to people is, you're comparing yourself to someone else, and there's someone below you comparing themselves to you. And then that person, and it actually ends up being a circle. Like, if you think about it, everyone's comparing themselves to someone, and it actually becomes quite cyclical. So you have to appreciate what you have, yes, but you also have to appreciate that this person who you admire so much, yet again, has their own insecurities and own problems. And so much of what we see nowadays is, you know, online, and it's filtered and it looks great. The times I've posted the most on social media has been when I've been at my lowest. And I felt like I had something to prove to myself, but also to other people. So if you're looking at the curated version of someone's life and thinking, why don't I have that? Chances are they probably don't have it either. Chances are, like, there's some element of this that isn't as perfect as it seems. And you just need to really, really focus and tune into, like, what do I have that I'm so grateful for, that if I didn't have now, I would have wanted to be working for. Like, that's also an exercise I do. I look at my life and I say, if something was taken away, what would I miss, and what would I be most grateful to have had? And it's normally my relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, you know, if someone said I would either take away your success or your family, I'm like, take it. Yeah. You can have take my sister. No, like, you can have, take it. No, you can have you can have all that in a day. Like, take it away. I don't care. It's the things that we don't share publicly online as much, and that don't have the big flashy things around them, that we are most grateful for and that are most important.
What do you think has been the biggest lesson for you over the course of this journey of recording the podcast, now writing the books, in which I guess in some way it's reflective for you to go back on all of these topics and think about how they impact you and how these different things make you feel? What does it really shone a light on for you?
That's a big question. I think the lesson I've really learnt time and time again is, if you're aiming for perfect, it's never going to happen. But if you're aiming for authentic, that happens every day. And that's really, like, what I've learnt time and time again. You know, the times I feel most fulfilled, the content that does the best, like, is always the most authentic kind. And it's always when you really trust your instinct and lean into who you are. And it's okay to not, like, people want a messy journey. People want to see someone who looks like them. People also want to be friends with someone who isn't, like, you know, obsessed with perfection and isn't a dick about it. Like, life is messy. Embrace that. That's the whole point. Yeah,
we forget this, isn't it?
Yeah, like, it's meant to be messy.
For sure.
And you know what I said to someone the other day? I was like, imagine if someone, you know, so often we want to know how it's going to work out. Like, is this going to be successful? Am I going to find love? Am I going to figure out what I want to do? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be healthy? Like, all these big questions. If you knew how every single thing was going to work out, if you knew the whole journey, it would not be any fun. This whole thing, this whole life thing would be so boring if you had it all figured out, or if a genie came out of a bottle. And we so often want the answers, and we want to know it's going to be okay to settle our anxiety. And it's like, no. It's important that you don't know. It's important that you just experience it.
And we all hate a movie spoiler. So why are we trying to spoil our lives?
Can I tell you something terrible?
Tell me.
I have a really bad habit of, I always read the Wikipedia synopsis before
Soph is the same. Soph
really?
we sit down and watch something, and she goes, you know, what's happening there? And I'm like, I don't know, darling. I'm literally watching it at the same time as you are. And she's like, phones out, and I'm like, are you searching it? And she's like, I like to know, it makes me not stressed.
I know. And you know what, it's like, in life you can't do that. So sometimes when you're watching a Jason Bourne movie or whatever, like, you just gotta know.
You're allowed to.
I do it all the time.
I want to ask you a fun story. So I listened to you on Inherited.
Oh yeah,
which was a great interview.
Thank you. I love it.
And I love the first story. I was so surprised by your story about meeting Ruth Rogers.
Yes, she's amazing.
What a cool story. So I know Ruth because she's interviewed a lot of incredible people. Yeah. But probably my dream guest for the show is Guy Ritchie.
Oh,
love
really?
His movies. Yeah, I love his movies so much.
What's the famous one he did?
He did The Gentleman a couple of years ago. He did the series. He's just released Mobland, or it's coming out very soon, with Tom Hardy and Pierce Brosnan.
Yes, I was going to say he has is it Tom Hardy he works with all the time, or Brad Pitt?
He works with Jason Statham.
Okay.
Brad Pitt was in Snatch. Very, very cool guy. McConaughey on one of the recent movies, but love the guy. So I listened to him on Ruth's podcast. Yeah. And then to hear that you were in the River Cafe in London, you met her. Like, tell me that story.
Okay, so this was a moment when I realized that I made a good decision. So I quit my job 3 months before this happened, and I was stressed and I was anxious But the way I could it was obviously then you have to work out your 2-3 weeks, whatever it was. I think it was 4 weeks even for me. So, you know, I was stressed and I had this opportunity to go to London and I was like, okay, I'm going to go. At the time I was really scared of flying. It's another thing last 2 years I've gotten rid of my fear of flying, which was like, I always thought was going to grip me. But at the time I was like, I have this opportunity. I'm just going to go. And I brought my dad with me and I get this like message from my team and they're like, do you want to have dinner at the River Cafe? And I'm like, yeah, of course. Dinner or lunch, it was a meal, I think it was dinner, and we're there and she comes over to me and she's like, I've heard about your podcast. And I was like, and I knew who I think I didn't know who she was, but I kind of like, I didn't know who she was before I went to London, that's for sure, but she's just amazing and people talk about her. And she came up to me and she was like, and she gave me like a handwritten like letter, which I still have, and was like, well, I want you to come on the show. And we had this whole big conversation. And then I was just like so impressed. And she brought me on her podcast.
Did she actually?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
I've got an episode with her and I know it was insane. And I remember that night, like, it was just a serendipitous thing where I was just like, this woman is so wise and incredible. And she's like interested in me and she wants to talk to me. And this never would have happened if like I hadn't have quit my job. And it was just this magical circumstance of, you know, having this person and being in such admiration of her. And I tell it on the story of like the strawberry tart that they had. And oh my God, it was the best thing ever. I still think about it. Like, if anyone knows a good like strawberry almond tart, it probably won't even do as well, but that tart was amazing. And I remember like that meal is just so significant for me because I'm just like, that was just one of those moments where you just realize like, okay, I made the right decision, because I wouldn't have had this opportunity and what felt like such a human moment if I hadn't have taken such a risk.
So it's a beautiful reminder that when you are being you and you're being authentic, you really get those rewards of life. Like people can pick up on that the energy is authentic, that you're doing what you're meant to be doing, that you're aligned with your purpose or your mission, at least at this point in your life. And I'm so excited for you. I often am shaking Soph and telling her about something that happens in your life because it's so special. Like for listeners of the show who are maybe new and haven't heard your previous episode on the pod, we met at a time in which it was just really starting to happen for you. And it was like February 2023, you were speaking on the panel at Spotify at this sort of, I think they called it like emerging podcasters or something. And I was there all fresh-faced, like eager to learn. And I think I asked a question of you. And I remember you telling the story about like recording the first couple episodes of your podcast in the back of your car and your Subaru.
Yeah, my Subaru Forester.
Right. And it's just so special for me as a friend to watch from the outside and see the wins that you've had. And I love it because I think it's so you and you've done it your way. And so it must feel special, right?
It does. It feels very special at the moment. And honestly, I'm like this, and I'm like, I don't have a dream job. Like there's no such thing. But like if I had to come up with one right now, this would be it. And it just feels remarkable. It just feels, I'm so lucky. Like I'm so lucky. There's so much of it that I'm just so lucky. Like not just with the professional stuff, but with how my personal life has turned out. And I'm sure, you know, there's so much going on behind the scenes for me right now that's so stressful and takes up so much of my mental space. But I just feel like I'm doing what I need to be doing. It all happens for a reason. I'm here for a reason. And like, I just ground myself in that. Like, and I'm sure it's the same with you. Like you touch like one person's life and that's more than most people do in a lifetime. So the fact that anyone listens to what I have to say, and I get messages being like, I broke up with my toxic abusive boyfriend and I quit my terrible job and I decided to go solo traveling, and like I'm like wow, like I'm sure you would have done it without me, but the fact that I could help you is like mind-blowing.
Pretty special.
Yeah. And if that's all it comes from it, I'm happy.
Hard pivot just before we finish up and I'll let you get out of here. You're adopting a dog, or you just recently have?
Yes.
And what's her name again?
She has a weird name. It's Talu. Yeah, I never heard that name before. We didn't choose it. It's like,
it's beautiful. It works.
Yeah, it does work. She's okay. I was talking to you about this before, but I've been fostering dogs for a while, and I'm very lucky in that I get like the big dogs. So like the dogs normally with behavioral issues, or the big dogs that like I get them. Like, because I love big dogs, and like I've always had big dogs, and my previous dog had like behavioral issues, so they give me sometimes like the tragic cases. And we'd had a couple before, and we loved them, and they got adopted, and they were so special. And then we got Talu, and I remember she like came out. Sorry guys, it's like I'm telling like the story of how I met the love of my life. Like I remember he came out on our first date. No, like she came out, and I was like, whoa, she's big. Like she's a big dog. And they told us that she was a Staffy, and I was like, that's not a Staffy. And we get in the car, and she immediately like takes to us. Like she's like putting her head on Tom's shoulder, and within like Tom has never had a dog before this whole experience, and like, oh my god, we just fell in love with her. And I think she's had a bit of a rough time. She was in the kennel for like almost a year. She's one of their longest residents. There was something going on that meant she couldn't get adopted, so she wasn't even allowed to leave the kennel. Most dogs, they're allowed to foster, take them on day trips. Yeah, she wasn't allowed, like an inspector, like legal case. And honestly, we took her home, and we were like, within like 2 days, we were like, we're in trouble. Like, but we did say we'd give it 2 months, and if someone else adopted her, only after that 2 months would we start considering it. She'd have like some interested people, but it just didn't work out.
That's so exciting.
I know.
Can I ask you what you think the benefits of a dog for people are psychologically?
Oh my gosh, I've noticed such a change. I honestly am like, I'm going through a tough time. I don't think I could do it without her. Like, it gets you out of the house. You've just got this thing that relies on you. You can't be as selfish. It makes you more patient. It's fun. It's like cuddly, and it's this beautiful thing that just like looks at you, and you would know this experience, and you're just like, oh, you love me. Yeah. Like you love me and you trust me, and it's
pure unconditional love,
unconditional. Yeah, I'm just like, and she's just so friendly, and you know, the other thing is you meet a lot of people. I'm a little bit naughty. I stir up drama at the dog park though. Yeah, I'm like, oh, look at that dog over there, like who bit her one day. Like I'm like, watch out. Like I always stir.
It's always the little little furry dogs that are
it's the French bulldogs. Oh, she's been attacked by like 2 different French bulldogs, and they will literally bite her. This dog weighs like almost 40 kilos, and she'll be like, oh, and like hide. Like, you're huge, like go for it. Yeah. I've just met these really cool people like at the dog park.
But I actually think that if you struggle with social interaction, a dog is a great way to bring down the barriers. And so people ask you about your dog. You can naturally ask people about theirs, and they'll tell you all about it. Yeah, because they're proud of them. Look at me. Yeah, and it's great. I think that dogs are such a beautiful reminder of those best traits in us.
100%. I never thought about that until you just said that. 100%.
They are the best. The best.
They're literally the best. Like, they just want to be loved, and they want to be good. Most of them, and like they're so playful and kind, and like the other thing is, she can really like sense emotions. And that's been like really amazing. Like she can really sense when like things have been going bad or going well. And she sleeps in the bed now.
Yeah, Barney sleeps in the bed too.
Listen, I know people think it's gross, but I'm like, why would I let her sleep on the floor?
Mate,
she's so tiny.
Yes. And so the thing is that Barney is like, he's so conditioned to 5 a.m. breakfast.
Oh, okay.
That like this morning, I was up like a couple of times during the night and struggled to sleep a little bit. And this morning at like 4:30, he comes over. He does this thing where he like puts his paw out and just like reaches out to you. And like he might just brush your face, but just to let you know, like,
I'm here.
Come on, it's time to wake up. And it's 4:30 this morning. I was like, oh, you cute little bugger. All right, I'll get up.
Yeah. That's the other thing. I can't sleep in anymore. Yes. Because I'm like, she needs a walk, and I don't want her. Yeah. I don't want to. Honestly, dogs are the best. If you're thinking about it, foster a dog. You can do it in an apartment. I always say to people, your apartment is better than what they have at the kennel. Very If you think about it, like literally, have you seen how big those kennels are? They're about the size of this table. Like, a dog doesn't care if they're out of that environment. You know, shelter dogs only sleep on average 2 hours a night from all the barking and how stressful it is.
Yeah, that's true. You watch any dog movie, you watch Pets.
Yeah.
I'm like,
they just bark and bark and bark.
It's like being in hospital with all the beeping machines, right?
Yeah, and so normally, like, when we brought her home, she just slept for 3 days. I was like,
loved it.
I know. Yeah. I was Googling because I was like, I'd never had a dog sleep this much. I was like, is it bad? And they're like, no, it's normal. So you should really do it if you're thinking about it.
A dog's life, hey? Hey, so good to catch up. So excited for you. Psychology of Your 20s, Mantra, the book that will be released on April 29th, whether that is ahead of us or behind us. Either way, go get the book. It'll be available on audio straight away.
Straight away, wherever you get your books.
Amazing. So excited for you. I can't wait for the book launch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course. Thanks.
Cheers.